Chapter 5 Forgotten. The solemn workhouse sat in silence, once home to a poor wretch that served there, now lying still in a heap on the hard floor where he once walked, as the dust floated and glistened in the hazy, reluctant light falling from the windows. The eerie stillness wrapped around all within, only contrasted by a relentless tapping at the windows, a reminder of the world beyond that waited for nothing and no one. Io stood indifferent and unmoved by the solemn scene before him, his eyes not even affording a glance at the twisted limbs of the beaten boy sprawled out on the floor, the object of his rage. His only interest and concern, the relentless, incessant tapping at the windows and the gentle tick of his pocket watch hands as he watched them make their way gradually around the clock face, the reminder of the customers that were still waiting. He shook his head, an agitated frown befalling his face. Suddenly, he brought his cane sharply down on the floor, shattering the stillness, and only then did he finally steal a glance at the body on the floor. The wretch lay still and lifeless, his head face down in a small pool of blood. Io brought his cane down again abruptly with a loud crash. Just then, the arm flinched, and a low groan echoed around the cavernous workhouse. A cruel smile slithered onto Io's face as he watched the heap further stir and groan on the floor. The hazy amber light crept around the poor teenager's eyelids as the gentle tapping at the glass panes got louder, along with the thuds of Io's cane, crashing through his head. He opened his eyes slowly, blankly looking around. Immediately worrying about keeping the customers waiting, knowing it to be unacceptable, he scrambled to his feet, his body feeling achy and sore all over, but he was unable to work out why or even how he came to be lying there on the floor. He noticed Io standing to the side, a strange look of satisfaction on his face. "Sorry for keeping the customers waiting, master," he respectfully said, and began dashing towards the nearest window. He straightened his hair, wiped away the blood, and tidied himself up ready to greet the customer with due care and diligence. "Hello, sir. How can I be of service today?" he asked, as the bright light from outside flooded through the window. A rather stately man peered through the glass with a raised eyebrow. "Ah, right. You took your time, didn't you?" he said, his face awash of disdain. "So sorry, sir," he replied. "Your task is of utmost importance to me." Okay. I would like you to write me a letter to my manager to explain my need for an increase in my remuneration." "No problem, sir. Would you be kind enough to let me know his name and a few more details?" The man reeled off information about his job and the manager's name, and then began to moan about the lack of value he felt the company gave him. "I will have this done for you immediately," he confirmed, rushing over to the desk and the waiting quill. He composed a formal letter in swirling, elegant writing, signing it with the customer's name. Wasting no time, he rushed back to the window to present the letter to the man, who was mildly satisfied, and left. Another tap at the window signaled the next person waiting. He worked attentively, focusing only on the precision and quality of his tasks, though there was something that he felt was out of place in his ordered and clear mind, a tiny fragment that had no place to fit and no rational reason to be. He just decided to ignore it, though, as it clearly was merely a distraction from the important tasks of serving his master. The day trudged on, but he barely noticed as tap after tap kept him busy, diligently serving in the unending monotony of his work. That niggling fragment refused to leave his head. He knew it was an irrational, pointless detail, but the harder he tried to put it out of his mind, the more it seemed to distract him. Then came another tap at the glass, signalling another opportunity to fulfill another person's needs and repay Io for his kindness in keeping him. The teenager looked around for the window, but all of the main operative ones were empty. The tap came again, and with it the irrational fragment flickered back into his mind, a shard of something that made no sense. He dashed to the far end in search of the customer, pinpointing the location by the sound. Right at the very far end, he saw a face peering in from one of the old, dirty windows, seldom used now. Strange, he thought, as he began darting toward the window. The face, now a little clearer and closer, seemed oddly familiar, yet he was sure he had never met her before. Those brown eyes, that long flowing brown hair, that kind face. He became hot, and sweat poured from his face as his mind battled to make sense. He was absolutely certain the person was a stranger, but those eyes he would know anywhere, eyes he did know. For he was Kentaro, and she was his dear Felicia. How had he ever forgotten such a beautiful face? What had he done to deserve such sadness as to not knowing her? She spotted him as he darted, heart thumping and mind a-whirl towards her. Feelings and thoughts ran wild as his mind unravelled, memories flooding back like a torrent. He remembered the treasured moments he had spent with her. He remembered every detail about her, every curve of her face as she smiled and as she cried, as they had spent moments entwined together. It all came back. He remembered his green hair and his flower, the cruelty of his master and the thoughts of what lay beyond the workhouse. But none of it filled him with as much raw emotion as the thought of being with her again. He ran towards her welcoming face.